Good afternoon. My name is Bridget. I'm an English language teacher at UnifyHub, and today I have the privilege to talk to Valeria. Valeria, can you introduce yourself and why you're here today?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Valeria and I am HR expert. I have been working in global companies for more than 5 years. And my favorite topic is cultural differences and how it can impact job interviews, career paths, or being a manager. And thank you for inviting me to this podcast. I hope it will be interesting.
Oh, thank you. I think we're going to get a lot of insights from you about, like you said, cultural differences and, working in an international environment. So that's brilliant. So I want to start off today by asking, how do cultural differences affect what people expect from a successful job interview?
Yeah, well, they definitely impact a lot, especially if you're trying to another company from another country or from the other cultures. And my favorite example is, I don't know how was it for you, but for example, I have faced a lot that job interviews expect you to say I. Like I did, I succeeded, I did this project, and if you say we, I actually got this feedback myself when I used we a lot. I got feedback, oh, it seems like you're not connected, you're still very connected to your old company or your old team,
Ah,
which is
interesting.
understandable. But the thing is, there are some cultures, for example, South Korea, and in their culture, it's very collective, like collectivism is a big thing and they use it all the time that because it's part of their culture. And actually for them it will be opposite. If someone use a lot of eyes, it means this person not team player, this person doesn't respect colleagues and so on. so
Interesting.
so it's actually interesting for both, for candidate and for the recruiter, because if recruiter search someone in South Korea or actually majority of Asian countries, they might think, oh, those people are not individual enough, which won't be the case.
Ah, so it's really important then, you would say, for both sides, the interviewer and the interviewee, to be thinking about the opposites, cultural
Exactly.
background, when it comes to like I and we, and not, I guess, penalize people for using them.
Yes, and the recruiter can miss out on very good candidates just because of these, one or two simple words.
Yeah, it's amazing what one word, like you're saying, can change things a lot. And do you have any other examples of cultural differences that maybe aren't necessarily language related, like a word related?
The other one, which I would say plays a significant role, is the directness or indirectness of the countries, of the cultures. Because some candidates may expect like clear communication during the interview, direct feedback, and the other ones would expect more subtle and more about hints. And other way around, the candidates from indirect cultures, they might not say you directly, oh, sorry, I'm not interested in your position. And they would try just kind of ghost you, I would say.
Oh no, that's not so good.
Yeah, but it's the thing, like they don't do it, because they want to ghost you. It's just part of their culture. It's hard for them to say no or to say openly, oh, sorry, I'm not interested. It's
Hmm.
easier for them just like vanish away.
So are you often in the position of interviewing people, or you're seeing it from a bigger perspective within a team?
I've been from all sides. I've been the one who was interviewing, I've been interviewed myself, and I have been working with managers and teaching them how to work with different cultures and in multicultural teams.
Okay, so you can advise from both sides. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, so moving on from that aspect of cultural difference in the interview, thinking about work-life balance. So how do different cultural views on work-life balance influence what candidates are actually looking for in the job offer or in the interview when they ask questions?
Yeah. Again, before I answer your question, people usually say me, "Oh, but the culture doesn't do that much, or we are very global." But that's not true. Of course, there is always exceptions, but there are majority things. And maybe you have noticed that countries like Sweden, Denmark, they really prioritize work-life balance. They are the first countries who like did remote work or reduced work hours. And then on the other hand, we have China or Japan, where the workaholic or work culture is very different. You probably heard about Japanese people spending time at work, then going to the bar with the colleagues, sleeping on the train, and then they come back to work,
Yes, yeah.
or or like staying in one company for whole life. Uh, and then we have people from Italy and Spain, and they're more like leisure orientated, which is different from one work-life balance in Sweden and Denmark. They also value work-life balance, but they try to have more like leisure approach.
Yes.
And I have like a very good example. It's not related to HR, but I have talked with my hairdresser, and she said that she was attending one training in Kazakhstan, and the trainer said when she was doing this training in Spain, everyone left at 6 p.m. The training wasn't over, but people in Spain left because for them it was over. And the same training, exactly the same one, continued until 3 a.m. in Kazakhstan, and no one left. People stay, so it's not even about job. They were like just learning new things, but people there were like, okay, we have to get the maximum out of that.
Yes.
We don't care about sleep or like going back home. And yeah, they stayed until 3 a.m.
That's such an interesting example. I mean, this question was talking about different cultural views, but sometimes I think there can be cultural views of a country expecting something different because I lived in Australia for a long time and then I've worked in other places. And sometimes people think that people from Australia don't have a strong work ethic when actually work hours in Australia are quite long. So sometimes like the wrong expectation of cultural differences there. Have you come
Oh, for
across that?
sure. Well, there are always some stereotypes, and I cannot think of the example right now,
Yeah.
but I can definitely see that happening because maybe people compare like Australia to some other English-speaking countries, but they don't really see that Australia is different in
Yeah.
some ways
Yeah,
than
that can
others.
happen as well, definitely. Um, Valeria, what are some of the biggest challenges you have encountered managing or working within multicultural teams?
The biggest challenge is that usually managers don't see the problem. They don't understand what's like why it's important, why they have to take care of it. Or for example, if a company originates from one country, but then they start to hire globally, hire people from other countries, they don't consider their culture backgrounds and they just continue to work the way they work. For example, in one of the companies where I work, I was conducting cultural webinar and only like employees came, not the managers, because managers were mostly from one country, but their teams were distributed, and only employees felt the pain because for them it was hard, and the managers thought, oh, like there is no problem, they just follow our rules, but not no one even told employees what are the rules. Yeah, so it's usually very hard to explain uh, managers, hey, maybe this person underperforms in your opinion, not because they underperform, but because they don't understand something. They don't understand what you expect from them.
That's so interesting. So, just a kind of mismatch of expectations and cultural expectations.
Yeah.
So, how can or how should managers adapt their leadership style in multicultural teams? Because first you're saying sometimes they don't even know what's going on. So, what should they do?
Well, first of all, is acknowledge that they have multicultural team. That would be the first step, and understand that either you have to create special culture for your team, or you should choose one, but then make sure that everyone agrees to the rules. Uh, but to be good manager is actually is to know and adapt to different leadership styles. Uh, it doesn't mean that you should be only egalitarian, for example, or only like super direct boss like. When working with different cultures, you have to use different styles and be comfortable in them. Because not always, let's say, manager style comes from top to bottom, but it can be from bottom to top. And one of my favorite cool books, Culture Map, uh, gives such an example when a manager from Denmark was transferred to China, and all his team was Chinese. And you know, in Denmark they use bikes, right? Bicycles, they go everywhere. And he continued doing that in China because it was something he used to. And what happened, his team started to think that he is not presentable enough, he is not respectable enough, he doesn't care about his team, because in China, coming on bicycle means like, I don't know, you're poor, you don't have money for a car, you're not very presentable. And its manager had to switch to the car just to keep up with those cultural norms.
Yeah, that's so. And that he was seeing it as just a normal way to get to work or to exercise, and
Exactly. And probably, you know, when you come to another country, he could have tried to change the culture of the whole team. But I would say in this case, it makes more sense for him to adapt his leadership style instead of trying to change, I don't know, 10 employees or how many he had.
looking at what's sort of easier and more appropriate.
Yeah,
And what about when it comes to feedback, giving feedback, receiving feedback, I guess performance reviews, all of that aspect of a job? Have you observed significant cultural differences in this area?
for sure. That's actually probably the biggest one, because the way people give feedback is very different, and the way people receive the feedback is very different. Uh, I personally had a case. One employee from Portugal came to me, and he started to share something, and I was like, "Well, have you talked to manager about that?" And he was like almost crying, which like nothing bad was happening, and he was like, "No, I don't want to go to my manager because he's angry person." And I was like, whoa, like why? And I started to do deeper dive, and I realized that the manager was from the country with very direct feedback, and he was mostly given negative feedback and very direct. Because when everything was nice, he thought, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. I don't have to praise my employee for that. And obviously, Portugal is about more indirect feedback and about appraisal as well. And like employee didn't understand what's going. He thought that just his manager is an angry person, like not kind. And I had to go and talk to the manager and explain to him that he should say nice things to the employees as well.
Not just the
Yeah,
negative feedback, yeah.
yeah,
That can be tough.
yeah. And sometimes um, opposite way can happen. For example, um, there are some cultures like Japan, for example, and we talked about that a little bit before, that they hesitant to give direct negative feedback. So sometimes it can be like, can you fill in those deadlines? And they won't give you direct feedback saying like, no, we cannot do that. Uh, and some misunderstand, but they would say it's something like, I don't know, we will see, or you know, in the countries like Turkey, they have word inshallah, which means if God gives us, it happens. Which just
Which is
means
like, what does that mean? Yeah.
exactly. And I don't know, for someone in United States, that may might not mean anything. Or they would think, okay, we are within deadlines because no one said no to them.
I when I was teaching in Australia, I had very multinational classes. So I have South Americans, Europeans, Japanese, South Koreans, and thinking about Korean and Japanese students being very, very hesitant to say no to something, whether it's just asking about homework or just asking in group conversations and with other students from other countries, just not wanting to say no or to say something negative, even if it was contextually appropriate for the group chat, just is a very hard thing to do. Obviously, we're talking about big international companies, cultural differences. So we're talking about people who live and work in different countries and they've maybe moved. So have you noticed that people who have moved to a new country tend to be more motivated or results driven than local employees, or is there no big differences? What do you think it is with all the moving around the world?
Well, being me, expat myself and moving around. But the thing is that there may be some general trends, but it's very important to avoid stereotypes. There can be many factors that influence motivation or result orientation, and those factors can vary from individual to individual. However, some possible reasons could be new challenges. Expats may be more motivated to succeed in the environment and prove themselves because they're a new place. Very often their living permit can be connected to work permit when the local person doesn't have this problem. Or cultural differences again. Expats may be from the different cultures with different values and different expectations, so they work harder to achieve more when local people may be more about work-life balance, for example.
But that's an interesting point about visas. If your work is linked to your visa and staying in a country, that's going to be a huge driver.
Yeah, that's why very often let's say trend I see, expats less likely to change jobs because again the visa moment.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And one of the final questions, but we might have some extra ones. What's the most exciting HR project you've worked on?
Yeah. Well, it's connected to what we talked about before, the managers who sometimes don't see what's going on with the teams. And I had this project which was including mentoring session, training programs, and everything was designed to equip managers with the skills and knowledge needed to effectively lead multicultural teams. Here, managers were not able to avoid it, and we would have sessions where they would talk about cultural awareness, understanding that there are cultural differences, there are stereotypes or some bases. Then about cross-cultural communication, where we developed effective communication strategies for working with people with different backgrounds. We had, let's say, how do you call it? Games where they had to provide feedback to people from like role playing.
Role play. Oh, nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where they had to provide feedback, for example, to people from different countries, or I would give them the case explaining some problem, and they had to explain how they would react to it. And there were some mentors who would provide feedback to them. And yeah, that was one of my favorite projects, and it actually gave big impact.
Yeah. And so how long would that be? A series of meetings, a series of events, or was it over one day? And sort of how many people did you get to help with this?
No, that was a series of events because we would work on like maybe 2, 3 cases per one time, and then we would ask managers to say, okay, if you have some case you want to work on, we can work on that next time and see the perspective of the colleagues. Overall, I think we covered for about 50 managers in this company.
Oh, superb.
Yeah. Well, not all 50 were, I would say like we had 10 We had 3-4 sessions with them, and then again and again. Yeah.
Oh, it's such a valuable tool to be able to give those managers, and a lot of it's just raising awareness, being aware of what they need to think about.
Yeah, well, it's HR. I agree with you, but sometimes it's very hard to explain this to managers because they think, okay, like don't worry, I just need to work and everything's gonna be fine. But then we have a lot of higher turnover, people leaving, or so on.
And I suppose, how do you, in those kind of sessions where you're trying to raise awareness and make people feel and understand cultural differences, when you get pushback, like people who are not so keen, how do you deal with that?
Well, usually I show examples, and usually people who push back, they face some problems later on. And yeah, I guess when it's like very big pushback, only examples help. Or people would still come to the mentoring session and they would see other managers, how they interact and what they say, and that kind of helped too.
So providing good examples, whether it's literally an example or seeing other people, is just the best.
Yeah, because uh, at least like my majority of my experiences in IT companies, and for them it's very important to have practice, not only theoretical stuff, which is sometimes sad because when you come to them in advance, because before something bad happened, well, not bad, but some problems arise, they would say, "Oh, like that doesn't make sense." But then when examples happen, they're more open to do something with it.
Ah, okay. But it would be nice if you could get there before.
Exactly.
It's too theoretical before then. And are you working on any interesting projects at the moment? Anything that you're enjoying within this kind of idea of cross-cultural communication?
Yes, like in my current company, for example, again, because I work with different cultures, with different backgrounds, I deeply involved. Actually, my job not related to cultural differences right now, but since I'm interested in this topic, I always try to put some impact on it. And outside of work, I'm actually working on the training about cultural differences for HR, which I believe should be very helpful, but it's still in the process.
Oh, good luck with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Valeria, thank you very much for sharing your insights today. I mean, you obviously have so much to share, and you've been giving so much to your teams and to managers and helping them be more aware. So I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. And I would say to someone who wants to know more about cultures, one of my favorite books, that's like my Bible, I would say, is The Cultural Map by Erin Meyer. Such a great book. And, when I read it, I actually learned a lot about myself and about how I fit in my own culture. That was very eye-opening. So I would definitely recommend to start from this book.
Fantastic. I was just about to ask you, is there any final tip? And can you tell us the name of that book again? But you've done it. So fantastic. You know what people need to hear. So thank you very much, Valeria.
Thank you.